no, I agree. And there's plenty of things you can do, like face taping and all those kinds of little fun things.
Right. Put your legs up the wall. So let's get into this lymph thing. Break it down for me a little bit. So basics, what is the lymphatic system and why should we be paying attention to it?
Oh gosh, I have so many theories that I've been thinking about through with the lymphatic system, because we know it's really important for our immune system. So it carries and flushes out things. Like if you get sick, that's why you get a swollen lymph node. Or even if if I shave my armpit and I get if I cut myself a little bit, like I'll notice a swollen lymph node because it's trying to heal. So it's going to go to places that need healing, and it's going to be like one of your first lines of defense. And it can it's a liquid, but it can get stagnated. And someone asked me a question the other day, and they were like, well, why do I have to keep doing this? Like, why is my lymphatic system so stagnant? And I was really trying to think through this, and I was like, I think that's a really good question, because it seems to be such a big problem. And there's all of these businesses popping up that do like lymphatic drainage massage, and people will post like before and after pictures, and it's a big difference. And I'm like, so why are we so full of the stagnant lymph? And I really do think, I think I've seen one person talk about this, and I don't fully know the science behind it, but I think there's a huge connection between excessive EMF exposure and stagnant lymphatic systems, because even people who are very like physically active will struggle with stagnant lymph. And I think it's like one of the only things that has really changed on a big enough scale, because I really don't think this had to be a huge problem a long time ago. Like I think that people will say, oh, like your lymphatic system doesn't move, so it has to move itself. But I think it has everything to do with posture will affect your lymphatic flow. Your breathing patterns will affect your lymphatic flow. I personally believe, though I can't attest to the science on this, that the EMFs will affect our lymphatic flow.
Well, let me add a little context to that, because just this morning, the first guest of today's shoot was an EMF expert. And
Interesting.
was talking about the big three, and his third of the big three was how EMFs disrupt the fourth phase of water. They literally break the water structure and the cellular membranes that we're supposed to have something called easy water, or this structured water. And water becomes structured in a healthy organism that has proper hydration, is grounded, is getting enough full spectrum infrared light, etc., and that structures the water. But EMFs disrupt this, and they make the water, they change it chemically, and that would be very much implicated in something like lymph, which is a liquid-based thing. So I think it's interesting that your intuition is going there, because I think he would also agree with that.
No, that makes it absolute sense to me, in terms of like, because you can structure the water in your body by grounding too. So I think it would make sense that even something like grounding, even though it's not a physical movement, it's not a massage, would be very beneficial for your lymphatic system because it is a liquid. So I think that's very fascinating. And I also think that there's a huge mental link too. And I've said this was like my second girl science theory was, I think overthinking and stagnant lymph are deeply tied. And I think that if you are a chronic overthinker, that will cause your lymph to stagnate. And I think the reverse is true. I think working on your lymphatic system is also going to like release your thoughts a little bit. And I say this as a chronic, like no one can overthink more than me, because I like to be prepared, and I like to think through worst case scenarios, which is not a good way to live. And I'm trying to actively break those patterns. But I just noticed that if I'm feeling like particularly stagnant-y and, puffy, and I've been traveling a lot, I get stuck in those thought patterns. And I think there's a lot of freedom in the belief that our thought patterns can be physical. Yeah. And it's kind of like what came first, of the chicken or the egg. But I think attacking it from both sides is like a really great way to work. So like move your lymph physically, and then let go of your thoughts, and just like really pay close attention to every day how it changes. But yeah, I start my morning every morning. I drink like a herbal tea that's really good for gently moving your lymphatic system. And I notice like a huge difference almost immediately in the morning. So
I think that makes sense to me, because I think the analogy when you're speaking is like one of a river that flows.
Yes.
And if the river is flowing, it's usually healthy, and there's not these like nasty little pools where algae grows. But if you try to contain water, or you don't give it an outlet, and it becomes stagnant, then it putrefies, and viruses can take place, or that might be negative thoughts in the body. If the river isn't flowing and constantly moving, that it just gets stuck in this energy of like resistance and stagnation, and that manifests in the mind. And then it, like you said, it's chicken or egg. I think Joe Dispenza always says that thoughts are the language of the mind, emotions are the language of the body, and they are delicately tied, because let's just say you have an anxious thought, regardless of which came first, that the anxious thought increases norepinephrine and adrenaline and cortisol, and therefore the body constricts, and then the mind picks up on the body constricting, so the anxious thought gets more anxious, and all of a sudden you're in quite the downward spiral, which sounds like you're probably familiar with, as you start to
I've spiraled a few times.
Yeah,
but I always say, my mom's big into physics, and an object in motion stays in motion, so my new thing is we're going to spiral up. So if you're already spiraling, you're headed really hard in one direction, you just gotta spiral up from now on.
Yeah, that's cool. I saw someone post recently, not science, but useful. I like this. This is where I get whimsical. I'm less concerned with whether something is true, more concerned with whether it's useful. So I don't care if it's true. I don't care if the science supports it. If it's useful, it might as well be true, and it's helping you. So this person online said depression can't hit a moving target. Yeah. And again, is that probably literally figuratively true? No, but it's useful because that makes her, when I feel this way, I've got to move, and then that helps her, and therefore depression can't find her. So it's just really interesting to have these things that you think about, these little tools that you lean on, because I think thoughts create things. Like, they do determine your reality. And again, if the thoughts are occurring inside of this body and the body is sick, then your ceiling for how positive your thoughts can be is really low. Like, I imagine you going through, when you were at your breaking point, even though you didn't feel depressed, I imagine the quality of your thoughts and how hopeful and how you were visioning about the future and maybe the family you were going to have one day, and all of that stuff was probably just not even on the radar. It was just survive, right?
It was total survival mode. It's like you can't even think about having a future, because you just want to be out of it so bad. And I think 90% of our thoughts day to day are recurring.
Yeah, right.
Which I think is fascinating too. So anytime I have a recur thought, I'm like, I can't be the 90%. I've got to break out of this.
All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.